Okay, hi everyone. So thank you for the introduction. And today I will be talking to you about egocentric video understanding in operating rooms and kind of the challenges that come with that and the opportunities that we might get from this. But first I want to start with a bit of motivation for this. And I brought a video from Grey's Anatomy, but it will be a bit graphic. So if you cannot see blood, then this is your warning. We don't get sound, so I'm going to stop this.
Yeah, I think. Oh, there it is. Holy moly. Holy moly. Wow. It's been so long since I've seen a waterfall in person. This is just the best. Yeah, I'm going to stay here a while, you guys.
Turn that off. I need to know what happened now.
Me too. And and the question and kind of what this talk is going to be about is in this really, really kind of high stakes environment, how can we kind of understand this environment with AI? And essentially, the question here is, what if we could have an AI system that can automatically detect mistakes, predict the next steps, or in general help surgical staff better? And in a long-term vision, what if we could even replace surgeons with robots entirely? I think everybody here has seen science fiction movies where there's some autodoc just like fixing you up. And maybe we can take a couple first steps in this direction. But for that, we need data, right? And there's no data, and there's real challenges to getting this data. Because there's a lot of like hard challenges to overcome here. First, there's ethical considerations. So these are really life and death situations. And these really sensible situations, the question is, how can we actually record these in a dignified way? Because there's like actual people's lives at stake here. And really, we want to make sure that we can record this in a way that is like okay for everyone. Another question is even, can we make such data public? And I won't answer these questions in this talk, but maybe in the future we will. And also there's privacy issues, like of course the patients themselves, but what we heard from talking with doctors is very much that they don't like to be recorded as well, especially what they're saying, because they talk just randomly during the surgery about their everyday lives and gossip about hospital stuff, like Grey's Anatomy, yes. And of course, they don't want to have that recorded. So these are some of the practical challenges, but there's also safety challenges here. So the question here is, does recording with egocentric devices actually impact surgeon performance? Like if you're wearing these glasses, does it decrease your performance? Usually if you're cooking something, this is really not that important. But if you're cutting somebody's brain, maybe you want to think about this. There's also sterility aspects, so these have to be sterile, and can we actually do this? Also, there's other things like FDA classification that you have to think about. But from looking at it, probably these would fall under like recording devices, but it's a bit unclear because they're wearables. So what we did in the following slides is we just simulate surgery for the beginning, just to get some data to get started. And with that, I would like to talk about EgoXOR, which is upcoming at NeurIPS from my colleague Ege. And this is kind of a play on words, of course, on EgoXO4D. And let me explain why this is. So in our chair, we have a collaboration with the University Hospital, and they have a training room where they do EMT first responder trainings. And in this kind of simulated OR, we can set up and we can record some data. And how we did this is that we have, as you can see on the top right, like these two are kind of Kinect RGBD cameras mounted to the ceiling. And in this work, for the first time, like these are the exos, we also bring the egocentric view into this, where we have multiple people wearing Aria glasses, recording simulated procedures. And we also put one Aria glass on this like surgical light, just to have one more viewpoint. Cape is your friend. And yeah, this is kind of the overview of this visualized. We also have a live ultrasound feed here that we stream, and we also record from this. And this builds on the work that we presented at CVPR. This is an example of this RGBD reconstruction that is captured from these Azure Connect cameras. So these are kind of time synchronized, and you get this RGBD, like very coarse RGBD understanding of the scene. But what we do now here in EgoXOR is that we bring also the egocentric understanding here,
pass me the needle.
also with audio.
All right.
You
The
can
needle
feel
has
it.
been placed.
And
We will be done right away.
injection is done. I think the syringe is jammed.
And maybe this was a good example of kind of the things that we can do here. Before I start, you can see all the different viewpoints of the surgical staff, pretend surgical staff, the patient sometimes, and the rest of the OR here.
I'm going to do the first incision now. And nurse, I think there's something, the microscope seems to be
Let me check out where to recalibrate.
Cool. Okay, we
I'm going to do the first incision now. And nurse, I think there's something, the microscope seems to be a little bit misaligned.
Let
Can
me
you
check out, try to recalibrate.
So these have kind of all the standard machine perception services annotations. So we get these coarse hand poses, we get eye gaze, and we also get the camera trajectories for all the Aria glasses wearers. We also synchronized all these together. This was a bit of not straightforward with the Gen 1s. I heard this is going to be much better with Gen 2, so looking forward to that. But yeah, all these videos are synchronized together with eye gaze. And of course, we also get the SFM reconstruction here. I think you've seen a lot of this, and if you're interested in this, probably you know about this, but I'm just going to let it play a little bit. And this is one example of the RGBD we get in addition to the egocentric views that we have. And what we can also do is try to register all of these in the same coordinate system. We haven't done so far because this turned out a bit tricky. But in the end, all of these live in the same coordinate system. So we can also align the sparse point cloud that we get with this more denser one in the end. And to give a bit of an overview of the overall data set that we captured, you've seen all the different modalities that we have. In total, we have 94 minutes of procedures divided into clips of actions that we're doing and performing. And the procedures that we simulated here are ultrasound-guided needle insertion, where we also have the ultrasound machine and can simulate this procedure. And the other one is with a surgical microscope, where we have minimally invasive spine surgery. Both of these procedures include workflow deviations and mistakes, so we can make this a bit more realistic and also have something to optimize against so we can detect these things. In total, we have around 85,000 annotated time steps, and we annotated this data set with semantic scene graphs, in addition to all of the data that we get from the Arias in general and the RGBD. But now that you learned about the data itself, we also have to talk about, okay, how do we actually understand this, right? And the method that we developed for the beginning for this is to predict these scene graphs. So you can see an example of these scene graphs at the bottom here. So how they're defined is usually as a triplet. So we have, for example, the head surgeon is currently scanning a vertebrae. And this is the annotations that we provided for this data set. And it's like annotated for 85,000 time points in this manner. And of course, in the top, you can see all of the inputs that we can use for a model to predict these scene graphs in the end. Exactly, just statistic overview and a bit more example here. So most of these classes are close to lying on and not really that semantically meaningful except in a spatial sense. But this is also, of course, important to understand what is going on in a scene. The more long-tail distributions, of course, are a bit harder to predict, but this is pretty standard. The model that we're using for this is an extension of the CVPR model that we had. So essentially, the bottom you can consider as the CVPR plus ultrasound. And we essentially encode all the different modalities. We pool them together, project them, and then concatenate them and feed them into a large vision language model, which then is fine-tuned to predict these scene graph triplets. The interesting part is that for the egocentric data, now we can introduce another additional branch that can use the egocentric RGB video, the hand tracking, and the eye gaze. And what we show here is that using this additional data is actually improving the results, like in F1 score for predicting these scene graphs, by quite a lot. And what's even more interesting is maybe the table at the bottom, which in the Nurse paper was hidden in the supplementary, is that if we're using ego only, we actually get quite a bit improvement to using the outside views. And this kind of shows that the egocentric view is really important to understand what the surgical staff is doing. If you have these outside cameras, they're good, but if you augment them with the egocentric view, which is much closer to the scene of action that you're currently doing, this gives you a much improved performance of understanding what is going on. So this is kind of the preview of this paper, and maybe to give a bit of an outlook, this is still very early work. So this is all simulated, and this is not real surgeries. We try to model this as close as possible to real surgeries, but of course there's no blood, there's no cutting. So to model these, you have to actually record real data. Another thing is that these semantic scene graphs can be used for downstream tasks like workflow anomaly detection, like unexplainability. They're really nice to look at, and like medical staff really like to have something to look at, but they're not 3D yet. So if we had 3D scene graphs, this would also make reasoning about the scene spatially a bit more interesting. And then, of course, as I said in the beginning, it's pretty difficult to move to real procedures based on all of these challenges that we're facing. But I think we will at least explore this direction further because there's a lot of things to gain there. And maybe a bit of the opportunities to bring this back to something that might realistically happen at some point. I think we will hear a bit more about vision language action in the next talk. But these models have shown a really great promise to generalize robotics, but they need a lot of data. And if we want to go at some point into fully automated robotic surgery, then we need this data. And this was kind of the first step in this direction. And with that, I would like to thank all of these people here, which you can see on the slides. You can also take a look at the data set itself. It's hosted on Hugging Face. And yeah, this was a joint work of Ege and Arda. Arda is a master's student, and he's still, I think, looking for a PhD position. So if you have something, let me know. And with that, I conclude, and thank you very much.